Today we're going to be looking at some report formatting, in particular advanced functions, conditional formatting, some sorting, how we can apply some conditional formatting in our charts, and how we can also do some additional formatting on our columns ourselves. So this is building on the videos we've done in the past where we've created our basic reports, and now we're actually going to go and enhance the way those reports look, and so we're going to focus on how we can do that today. I'm going to first of all, from the dashboard view, create a new report. And for this example and the examples we've done before, I'm going to use the National Student Census as my view. And that'll bring up our canvas again. So the report itself won't be overly complicated. Again, as I said, we're going to focus on how we can do some formatting. So for this report, I would like to bring in the campus suburban name from the campus folder. I'm going to put that into my columns. And then from the student measures folder, I want to bring in the student head count, and I want to bring that into our report twice. So again, I'm just going to drag that up into my columns, and then I'll bring it over again. Now I've added it twice because I want to manipulate one of those fields to change the way it looks. So I want to keep the actual head count in my report, and then I want to manipulate the other field so I can display it perhaps in this instance as we go forward as a rank. So I've brought that in twice. Now I also want to apply some filters to my report. So from the year level folder, no, my apologies, from the census year folder, I'd like to bring in the census year. We drag that over into the filter section of the report. And as we've mentioned before, try and use those filters that we've created for you that are already defined and ready to go. So we're going to bring in the student campus filters. So I'm going to drag those in to the filters as well. And if you take a look again quickly on the right hand side now where our filters are, you can see we should have a census year, and then diocese, campus and school suburban name. And those three filters there have come from the student campus filters that we created. You can also see when you expand the census year that it's not yet formatted, and we'd obviously like to make the census year nicely formatted and presented so when people use the report it's much simpler to select a year. So for example, when I pop out the diocese, it's all there, it's nice and populated, but when I do the census year, it's not there yet and we need to click again. So the next step we're going to do is filter format. Okay, so we can format our filters by going to the filter format menu at the top here, and then we can select the filters down the left hand side that we need to set up. So in this instance we're setting up the census year, and what I'd like to do is change the entry style to be a value list selection. So currently it's manual user, which means they've got to type it in or they've got to hit that arrow twice. We're going to make it a value list selection. And as we can see down in here in this box, there's nothing in there at the moment, there's no values. But I'm going to hit refresh now. And that's going to go through and retrieve all the values for year that are available for census. You can see we now have these values available to us. I also would like to just set it up to run for a default value. So I'm going to select 2016 in this instance. So once we've done that, we close our menu by closing the little cross, remember that, not the large cross, the little one. And if we just double check our filter over here, when I pop it out now it's nice and presentable, the years are all there, and by default it's selected 2016. The last thing I wanted to do with the year filter was actually define that it's an equals to rather than an in list. So I only want to run this report for 1 year at a time. So I'm going to go over to my filters here, little arrow next to census year, and I'm going to change the operand to an equal to. So as I said, that just means the report will only ever run for 1 year rather than allowing you to run it for a number of years. Okay. Now that we've set up our filters and we've got our columns, we're actually going to go in and do some of the formatting. So we have a basic report at the moment which lists the school name, the campus name, and the head count at that school. So what I want to do is show you how we can apply some advanced functions to manipulate or change how these fields look. So for the student head count, we're going to go to the advanced function. So we just use a little arrow next to the student head count, and then we go to the advanced function. What we then want to do is select the function that we want to apply. So in this instance, I'm going to apply a sorting where I only want to receive in my report the top 10 schools by student head count. So I'm going to apply a top 10 rank. So I'll select the top 10 rank and I'll hit save. Now you can see the result set of this report is limited to 10 schools, and over here we have their rank. Now one of the things we might want to do is format our columns again to make sure that the heading is meaningful, so we're going to call that rank, and it is 0 decimal places, so I'll leave that as is. Okay. Now you can see that we've applied a rank, but I'd like to actually have the rank appear in order, so from 1 to 10. So I can do this a couple of ways. So the first way we'll do this is to go to the rank field, and from the little drop down menu we can do a sort. So I can apply a sort in an ascending or descending order. So I'll choose an ascending order. Now we can see that our report has been sorted and the school at the top is the one with the largest head count for 2016. Now what we'll do is we're going to just turn that sort off, and we'll be back to where it's sorted by the school name alphabetically. So another way we can actually manipulate the way the data is sorted in the report is to move the rank to be the first column in our report, and there you can see. So what CD3 does here is the first column in the report it applies the sorting on. So we didn't actually have to turn the sort on. In this instance we were able to move the column. And depending on how you want to display your data, you may prefer to have that column over there on the left anyway. So there's a couple of different ways we can sort the data, but keeping in mind that the column to the leftmost corner of the report is always the one that is sorted on. Okay, so now that we've got it in order and we've got our top 10, what I'd like to do here is actually apply some conditional formatting to my student head count so that I can highlight perhaps schools that have a strong enrolment and schools that have less. And again, remember this is just a demonstration on how you would apply the formatting. So we go to the menu, the little arrow for the student head count field, we choose conditional formatting. We're going to do a basic style. In this instance, we do have an option to look at advanced later. So we need to set up some conditions or alerts, as they're called, down the bottom here, to actually say when something happens, what do I want to do to that field? So I want to add a condition. I'm going to add 3 conditions. So in the first one, I want to say that the student head count is less than 1250, and I'm going to give that a colour of a very pale green. Okay, so my next condition, I'm going to make this a between and say the student head count is between 1250 and 1650. And I'll give this a slightly darker scale of green. And then my last one is going to be whatever's left, I guess. So I want it to be greater than 1650. And I'll make this a darker green. Okay, so just looking at that screen there, remember that we're doing it on this field over here on the left, the student head count, and we're saying we want to colour this field, these three colours, if the student head count meets any of those conditions. So once we're happy with that, we just close the little window, and you can see now that I've applied conditional formatting. So I've just used a green scale, if you like, of shading, just to sort of say, look, these two are, these two stand out there. They're significantly higher than the rest. We've got some in the middle, and then we have a lighter shade for those that haven't got quite as many students. This is where you might use your red, green, orange type colours to indicate good and bad, or to highlight something that's doing well or something that's not doing as well. And this is just the method and how you can actually apply that conditional formatting. Now, again, I might just fix up the name of that. I want to take off the word sum, call it sum student head count, and close that. Now I actually want to chart this as well. So I'm going to go to the Charts tab. And over here on the right, under our chart types, I'm going to select the horizontal bar. Okay, now that I've selected a horizontal bar, I need to add my fields into the axes, the horizontal and vertical axes. So the student head count will go into the horizontal, and the campus, suburb and name will go into the vertical. So now I have a visual representation of my table of my top 10 schools by student head count, and we've displayed that in a horizontal bar. Now, what we can do is we can actually take that conditional formatting from our data and apply that into the chart as well. So we can do this by going up to the menus at the top, and the last one here is called Series Settings. If we click on that, I can go to the field that I want to work with, which is the head count, and underneath the conditional formatting, I can pop that open and I can say to turn the conditional formatting on. And then I need to say what kind of style I want to apply. And we're doing a bar graph here. So I'll set this to bar. And then I'll close the little menu. And our blue chart that we had before will now change to reflect the conditional formatting that I applied back in our data. So that shading of green matches my table where I'd applied conditional formatting based on the head count. So that's just to show you, I'll go back to the chart, how we can actually carry through the conditional formatting from our table of data into our chart. Okay, so that was what we call a basic style of conditional formatting. And what I'm going to do, the last thing today, is show you how we do advanced conditional formatting. So I'm going to use the same report, I'll just add on top of this. So I'm going to go back to my data, and I'm going to go back to my fields over here on the left, and I'm going to grab the campus, suburb and name, and I'm going to bring it in to the left of, now, so it looks a bit funny at the moment, I have campus, suburb and name in there twice, but I'm actually going to apply some advanced conditional formatting to this field, so we won't look like this when we're finished. So again, using the little arrow next to the column name, I'm going to go into the format and go into conditional formatting. This time, rather than create a basic alert, I'm going to create an advanced one. And you can see now what we have to do is we have to go down the bottom here and we have to actually choose to add a condition. So an advanced alert will allow us to apply a condition to the field we're looking at, which is campus, suburb and name, based on the value from another field, which is the student head count. So that's quite powerful, whereas the basic alert that we set up before, when we were looking at the student head count, we could only do it based on its own value. But now we can say, I want to change the way this field looks based on the value that's represented in here. So that's what we're going to do with this advanced condition. So I need to create 3 conditions. What I need to do is say, what am I going to create the condition on? So I'm going to create the condition on the student head count, and then say add a condition. And then I need to set it up. So I've got to set up 3 of those. So the first one will be less than, so we'll just make that a less than, and then we define our value. So when our student head count is less than 1250, what am I going to do with it? So I also need to give it a name, so I'll just call this it's a condition name, less than 1250, and a style. So how will that condition be applied to my report? So I'm going to actually change this to an icon, and I'm going to use traffic lights. So I could use arrows, I could use ticks and shapes. I'm going to use traffic lights. So when my student head count is less than 1250, I'm going to use a traffic light, and I'm going to apply a color of. And in this instance, we're saying the less the head count, I guess the more severe the condition. So I'll make it red in this instance. And then once I've got that condition as I like it, I'll hit update. So you can see I'm starting to build my conditions here. So I'm going to add another one, and this one will be between 1250 and 1650. Again, style is icon, traffic lights. I want my student head count to be between 1250 and 1650. Save that. And what color am I going to apply if that condition is met? So we applied red for less than 1250. I'm in between here, so I'm sort of in the middle. I'm going to apply orange. So again, reading that, I have where my student head count is between 1250 and 1650. I want to apply a traffic light of orange. So if we're happy with that, we hit update. I've got one more condition to add. So this will be called greater than 1650. Again, we're doing an icon, traffic lights. What am I going to look at in terms of my condition? It's the student head count. This time it's a greater than, and we apply 1650. Save that, and then what color are we going to apply if that condition is met? So here we're saying, well, this is good. They've got a much larger student head count than the other schools, so we're happy with that. We're going to flag that as green. I'll hit update. So if we just check our conditions here, we should make sure we sort of covered all our ranges of data. You have a quick look. Yes, I've got 3 different colors. Okay, I'm happy with that. Again, we just close out using the little cross. And now what I've got is a traffic light to show whether that school, are they excelling in terms of the number of students they have, or are they a little bit below par? As I said, this is just purely an example of how you do the formatting. There'd be probably other examples with things like NatPlan where your conditional formatting would make a lot more sense in terms of above and below averages and things like that. So what we might want to do is format this field now, because it's not really the campus suburban name. In this instance, it's just a traffic light in red or yellow or green. I'm just going to give it a dash as the name of the column, so it's not too wide. And I actually want to make that traffic light appear in the middle of the column. So under the data there, I'm going to change my alignment to be centered. And once I'm happy with that, little cross again to close the menu. So now you can see I've just formatted that column. So I can see a rank. So we did some conditional advanced functions to come up with a rank. We applied a basic conditional format to shade our student head count to sort of make things stand out or make things not look as good as others. And we applied an advanced conditional format to put a traffic light next to the school to show how they were performing against the student head count. The last thing, and then we formatted it, of course, just to tidy up our names, maybe center some data, and maybe make that column not so wide. The last thing I'm going to do is just go and have a look at how that looks in the output. Remember, you've always got to go and hit go when you get here. And this is sort of how it's finally going to look. I can just resize that chart a bit by using the triangle in the corner there, the blue one. I might make it not quite as tall. And now I've got my data and I've got my visualization there in my bar chart. Now, once you start creating conditional formatting, you'll get a list of all the formats or conditions. Now, sometimes that's useful to have there because it'll help the person looking at that chart understand why it's red, yellow, green, so that can be valuable. Sometimes you'll have a number of conditions to the point where that'll be 20, 30 long, and you may not want to turn those, display those. So what we can do, it's purely a choice and probably whether they're something that you need to display on a report. Up the top, in the middle of all the menus there is a conditional formatting menu, and we can decide whether we want to turn those alert legends on or off. So if I turn that off and I scroll down, those conditions are gone now. So as I said, it'll be a report by report decision there as to whether does the person using that report need to understand how he came up with the green and the yellow and the red, and you may leave those alerts on. But just showing you how you would turn that information off. And again, the last thing with that is whether or not you want to display the table of data or just the chart. And we can do that by the second menu option up the top here called Table On Off. And I can turn the table off and I just have the bar visualization there. So again, they're just little things for you to think about when you're finalizing your report, how you want it to look. And they're just, I guess it's sometimes knowing where those little options in the menus are. So I'll turn my table back on there. And then the last step obviously would be to go and save your report so that you don't lose it, remembering that you want to choose an appropriate category to put that report in. So I'll put this into training and I'll put it into a subcategory there that I've created called VC Training Reports. And this might be VC Training Session 2 Report Formatting. And then again, if I want to make sure everyone can see that, I'll leave it as public. If I only wanted that to be for myself, I could set that to private, but in this instance, I want to make this public, so I'll hit activate. So that's today's session where we focused it on report formatting, conditional formatting, and some advanced functions.